Hello, good evening. Welcome to the Bears Huddle podcast with me, your host, Owen James, the UK take on your Chicago Bears. Guys, we are fast heading towards that draft in only 8 days' time. And draft fever is hitting. Mock drafts are everywhere. Position rankings are everywhere. We've got Mel Kiper's latest position rankings. We've got consensus position rankings. We've got everything, guys. We are going to talk a little bit of those position rankings as well on this video. So please, obviously, hang on for that. But mainly in the positions, obviously, of need for the Chicago Bears. And I think one of the biggest things that comes across to me, I don't know about to you guys, but if you look at the position rankings and you look at the depth in some of the positions, the positions where the Bears have a genuine need. Genuine need. Offensive line, defensive line, safety, running back, tight end. There is real strength in depth in those positions. There are a number of players that the Bears could take that could do an equally good job on this roster to back up the likes of Cole Kmet, to supplement the offensive line, to add to the defensive line, to play opposite Montez Sweat, etc., etc. But look, I think one of the things that seems to be becoming very much evident, and I think a lot of it is down to obviously the thoughts and the beliefs around head coach Ben Johnson, is that the Bears will look to take a running back in this draft, either in the first round or the second round. A running back is very, very high on the list of priorities for the Bears. Now, like I said, Ben Johnson's got some previous for this. When he was offensive coordinator with the Lions, he obviously went for Jahmyr Gibbs at 12, a bit of a surprise. That's why a lot of people are saying that, if Ashton Jeanty does get to 10, he will be the Bears' pick at 10. He is one of those blue chip players. Now, I would argue that although this depth is very deep in all those key positions, it doesn't have what I would describe as a whole lot of blue chip players. Once you get past those initial 8, 9 top level talents, the Travis Hunters, the Abdul Carters, the Cam Wards, the Ashton Jentys, and so on. Once you get past those guys, Mason Graham, there's a lot of players who, you'd be equally happy taking at 15, at 18, at 20, for example, than you would be at 10. Certainly, you look at the running back depth, and if the Bears are to take a running back, if Ashton Jeanty, we'll talk a little bit about how and why. I'm starting to believe that Jeanty could be there and that the Bears will take him at 10. There is a growing belief amongst analysts that could well be the case, given that the other two teams most likely to pick a running back may have needs in other areas. But you look at the depth on the running back chart, and obviously you've got Ashton Jeanty, who is the top back. He is being described as a generational talent, someone who could be a guy who comes in and changes an offense for the better. He could really take this offense to the next level. I believe you add him into the likes of DJ Moore, Roma Dunze, Cole Kmet, whoever else we draft at the wide receiver or tight end position, obviously Caleb Williams, add him in. The offensive line, that's another thing. You get this guy running behind a offensive line that has had work done to it, that has been substantially upgraded and improved over the summer, with Joe Tooney, with Dalman, with Jackson, etc., etc. These guys have come in with Darnell Wright and improved this squad. I know Darnell Wright was already there, but have really substantially improved the offensive line and could blast big holes in the opposition to make huge holes for this man to run through. Now, the thing about Ashton Jeanty, guys, is this is a guy who did it even though he was the sole weapon, and everyone knew he was going to get the ball, and everyone knew he was going to make the run, yet he still did it time after time after time, because realistically at Boise State, he was their only weapon. But the depth at running back is there. If it was that Ashton Jeanty is not there at 10, if he was to be picked by the Raiders or the Saints, which seem to be the other two teams most likely wanting a running back, you've got Amarian Hampton out of North Carolina, a guy who was one of the top 30 visits just recently. They're, of course, over now. Amarian Hampton would have been, I think, the best back in this draft had there not been a player called Ashton Jeanty. Hampton is a top running back. You've also got Quinshawn Judkins out of Ohio State, another very talented running back. Travion Henderson out of Ohio State. Ohio State had two absolute superstars. on their roster. Caleb Johnson, another player who has been through, been through Hallis Hall as well this week. Those are the top 5 guys in this draft, and those are guys that you can get in the second. In Hampton, I think, and Henderson could well fall to the second. They'll probably be there at 37. I think that's a definite pick you could go for there. Quinton Jenkins, Caleb Johnson as well. Johnson's a mid to late second round guy. Could even have seen him fall to the third in some mock drafts. So those are guys that we could pick up if Jeanty isn't there. If the Bears decide to perhaps go for a defensive tackle, that position, or someone like, for example, if he falls on, if he was to say go to that level, Tyler Warren, or even someone like an Armand Membu, who's probably the best tackler in this draft by a street. But Jeanty is the top talent. Now, how and why could the Bears end up drafting Jeanty? That's what we all want to know, because I think a lot of people honestly believe that by the time the Bears come to pick at 10, Ashton Jeanty will have gone to either the Raiders or the Saints. However, here's the big however. According to a number of analysts and a number of people, obviously, who comment and watch the game, who know far more than I do, the Peliceros, the Rappaports, the Shefties, etc. of this world, Mina Kimes, etc., they've been talking a little bit about what could happen in this draft. Now, the gossip and the rumour coming out of Oakland is that, out of Las Vegas, guys, flashback to the past there, out of Las Vegas, is that Pete Carroll is actually more interested in taking a lineman with his first pick. Someone at 6 like an Armand Membu. That is the big gossip that is going around, that if Membu is there at 6, and I think there's a strong likelihood he will be, that they will take Membu to further try to secure their offensive line and build a line that can protect Geno Smith, that can obviously allow him to use their weapons like Brock Bowers, etc., and help them to start to develop offensively. Obviously, left tackles are big currency these days. They are well thought of. They are, becoming, the offensive line is absolutely vital. And I think, you've seen in recent Super Bowls, the team with the best offensive and defensive lines have won the Super Bowl. And that's why it's felt that the Raiders may obviously looking to start to build. They're not obviously going to be Super Bowl contenders this year. I mean, weird things have happened, but I don't think there's no way they're going to be. Armand Membu may be that first piece on them building those offensive lineup. And that's why they feel that Jeanty could well get past the Raiders. Now, the other position, obviously, there he could fall to and could go at is number 9 to the Saints. Now, there's obviously as well talk that Derek Carr has some sort of shoulder issue that could keep him out for the season or for a long period of next season. So the Saints now are starting to need a quarterback. Now, Spencer Rattler is there, but it's thought that Spencer Rattler is not thought to be the answer. He's thought to genuinely not be what the Saints would call good enough to kind of take their offense forward. So there's talk of them looking at, and with the likelihood as well that he falls, Shedeur Sanders at 9. So I think relying, of course, that some of the quarterback needy teams like the Steelers, for example, don't trade up into that top 5, top 6, top 7, top 8. With Carolina reportedly willing to move out of the top 10, there could be a little bit of a trade there, with the Steelers being absolute quarterback needy massively, with them not having one, which is kind of important apparently in this game. Joke, guys, joke. But look, if Shedeur Sanders is there at 9, there is a likelihood as well that the Saints could actually take Shedeur Sanders. He's the sort of guy who could fit into their offense, who could run their offense, similar as Derek Carr. Again, someone who they see as perhaps being a future similar to Drew Brees in the way that he plays. So that could well be the option. Now, if that happens, and unless there's a lot of ifs and whys and maybes, this happens, then that means Jeanty would fall to 10. And I think if he is there at 10, the Bears will run to the podium and they will take Ashton Jeanty. He is, I think, someone who could really move this offense on to the next level. And those of you who are saying, well, what about edge, Owen? What about defensive line, Owen? Well, look, you look at the depth. There is a lot of depth in those positions, that could well be there. Second round, for example, a Kenneth Grant from Michigan, a defensive lineman, likely to be there in the second round, absolutely top quality player. There is a real likelihood that he's going to be there. There is going to be, an awful lot of talk of, the edge rushers. Obviously, why the likes of Mikael Williams and James Pierce are likely to go in the first round. There are further candidates beyond those guys who, will be available second round, late second round, even mid second round. And the Bears have those 4 picks in the top 70. Guys like I think, obviously Nick Skirton may well be available in that second round. Princely Amalian, Landon Jackson, J2 Tuamalo, Josiah Stewart, Donovan Ezaraku. These are all guys, again, who could come in and supplement this defence. So there is a number of options. Safety, later on in the third, you've got the likes, I think, of Castro, Winston, who are going to be there. So going for Jeanty is not that big, is a huge a risk. You've even got Harold Fannin, who, Cam Scatterboo, okay, he's more a running back, but there are guys later on the draft who you could bring in if you go for Jeanty in that first round over them. Now, why Jeanty? Why would they go for him? That's the question I think you all would ask. Well, this guy's figures are phenomenal. This is a guy who, like I said, when he was at Boise State, he was the only weapon they had. They had nothing else. It was Ashton Jeanty or nothing. That's what I'm hearing. I don't know. I don't know for a fact. That's what I'm hearing. Okay, I'd never watched any Boise State football. I'm not a Boise State fan. So there you go. But look, this is his figures. Let's have a look at his figures, shall we? So in 2024, the season just gone for them. He played 14 games, had 374 rushing attempts, rushed for over 2,000 yards. Generational. 2,601 yards and 29 TDs. 29. Those figures are amazing. And he averaged, look at his averages as well. Look at those averages. 7 yards a carry. Bloody hell, that is mad. Averaged over 185 yards a game. Now, look, I'm not saying he's going to do that in the NFL because the NFL is a complete different level to the level that Boise State play at. So, yeah, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but these figures are incredible. 23 receptions, 138 yards, 6 yards per reception, 1 TD in the air. But if you go back to the season before that, he had 43 receptions, 569 yards, averaged 13.2 yards per catch, 5 TDs. So clear, that he can actually catch the ball out of the backfield and be a receiving threat as well as a running threat. But obviously, running threat is his main weapon. 2023, he had over 1,000 yards again, 1,347 yards, 6.1 yards per attempt, 14 TDs, 112 yards per game. So again, averaging over 100 yards per game. Obviously, his first year not so good, but those 2 years running into his graduation into the draft are absolutely outstanding. This guy is someone who is a franchise-changing player. He is someone who, if he comes into this offense, could really supplement and add to what we've already got. And you put him into the hands of Ben Johnson, Declan Doyle, you put him into their hands, you give him to Eric Bieniemy, the running backs coach, who was an offensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl winner. You've got an absolute stud here that could really change the Bears offense and take it to the next level. Like I said, this is the scenario that he gets past Raiders and the Saints, and I think if he's there at 10, you take him. He looks generational. He looks franchise changing to me, and I think he would give Caleb Williams a bit of a break. And it's also, it helps with so many things in terms of that offense. It gives more weapons. It gives more play opportunities for Ben Johnson to call. It gives more creativity opportunities for Ben Johnson to call. It gives more opportunities to play action. People are going to believe, we're going to hand the ball to Jeanty as much as is possible if he continues this form into the pros. And look, I know there's a risk with every college player who does amazing at college level, to step up to the NFL, which is a huge step up. But this man is someone who, change of direction, flick of his hips, can get away from people, breaks tackles. There is no one close to him with those stats. To me, this is a no-brainer. If he's there at 10, you take him. Guys, let me know your thoughts about Ashton Jeanty and the Bears taking him at 10 if he gets past the Raiders and the Saints. Thank you for watching the Bears Huddle podcast. As always, on the way out, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. And guys, let's bear down.